The next video will show you how I'm preparing for a recording using a system of post-it notes rather than a manuscript, because I don't typically have time to write a manuscript. You'll also see that I add another camera to the scene. I add the front camera to OBS Studio so that I can also record my face. You'll see halfway through the video that I am improving the audio considerably with VoiceMeeter Banana. I know that's the name of the tool. Ikke noe slåssing! Welcome to the next video in this series. In this video I want to show how I am preparing for the video that I want to record. I use post-it notes to remember what I want to say in what order. I haven't written a manuscript because I simply do not have the time to do that. I hope that with these post-it notes I at least get the order right, and if I fumble a bit or let's say I have to start a few sentences over again, I will just edit that out. The most important thing when I do the recording later is to make sure that I have enough breaks between the things that I say so that it's easier to cut out later. You can see on the post-it notes that I have also written down the kind of scenes that I would like to use in OBS Studio. So F1, that would be the main display. F5, that would be the top camera, the one that I'm actually using right now. Here again. And you can tell I'm missing this one. I wanted to have a face camera or a camera facing me as well. And I don't have a scene for that, so I thought I'd use that opportunity to also show how I am adding a scene and how I connect the camera to a scene. I have two cameras connected to this computer. One of them is showing these post-it notes, and that will always show onto the desktop. The other one is mounted on my monitor and facing me, so that is the one that I want to connect right now. Unfortunately, they are called the exact same thing in Windows, so I can't always tell which one is which, but with OBS Studio, when this is set up, it will be easy for me to switch between them. So let's say I go in here, but I press one more here. I'll call this F6 and face camera. There, so I now have a new scene. This means I also need to edit my nice cheat sheet that's on my keyboard so that I remember which one it is, and I'll paint a smiley face on that because I plan mostly to smile throughout the videos. And now I need to actually add a device. That would be a video capture device here. I'll call that the camera on monitor. There we are. There, and then I choose what camera to use. This one is grayed out because that's probably the one that is facing down and unusable. I'll try this one. There it is. That is the right camera, but I'm not entirely happy with these settings. So I have to go and press configure video here and set these settings manually. Actually, I like what I have right here. Let's see here. No focus, that's the most important. And also no auto white balance, because otherwise the camera would kind of jump back and forth the whole time. So I'm happy with that, but what I don't like is necessarily the resolution. So I'll go to custom, and I want this to be HD. That would be this one, 1287. You can tell here that I've taken a few pages out of most YouTubers' books. I have put up a picture to cover up all the holes in the walls. I've put in a plant to cover the power socket. I have my expensive guitar hanging there as some kind of ethos. I don't know whether or not it works, but it gives a nice color balance rather than just a sleek wall. I've added 2 extra lamps to give me a little bit more lighting, and hopefully this will be enough to cover that. Alright, I'll say OK here. Now here in the canvas I have the camera covered like this, but I want this to stretch out over the entire canvas. So now you can see the benefit of me choosing the same resolution as the canvas is, so I don't have to stretch or extend the image. Hopefully that will create the most crisp image. The last thing I do is I take these post-it notes and I put them up on the lower edge of my monitor so that only I can see them, and I use them as cue cards for the recordings. The most important thing for me again to remember is to have enough breaks. If I have enough breaks, then I can easily cut things out later without any particular interruption. In the next video, I will then have the actual recording of the lecture that I plan to do. and we will then see how I can go about re-editing that to make it into a shorter and a better video with better sound.
Well, not so fast. It turns out that there is still a little bit of work to do. This part of the recording is actually several days after the first half of this recording, and the reason is I did try a few recordings and I found out that the audio was pretty bad. To be honest, the thing that irritated me the most, I mean, everyone hates listening to their own voice, but the thing that really irritated me was that I constantly got some kind of crackling in the actual audio, and other times it sounded like the audio was just going just slightly faster than the video, and I just couldn't figure out what to do. So obviously, after hours of Googling and watching other YouTube channels, I figured out I had basically two choices. The first one would be to fiddle around with the settings until everything worked perfectly, but in the end that would just provide you with the solution that worked for me, which would probably not be the same for you. The alternative was to install another piece of software, which is an audio mixer. And it turned out that there were actually a lot that used that for streaming as well. A lot of these professional Twitchers and YouTubers use something called VoiceMeeter Banana. That is this tool. I installed that myself. It looks like kind of an 80s recorder. Obviously, once I saw the cassette tape, I was in love. And what that does is it provides you with kind of a mixer table for those of you who have some experience with playing instruments. So you would have multiple inputs, and then you would connect all those in and adjust the volumes, and then you would only have one signal out. And the same thing is what this mixer does. Because the source of the problem that I had was typically because OBS tries to merge multiple audio streams into the same movie, and that is very hard to do, and it isn't doing a very good job at it. There's also stuff like buffers and performance issues. However, VoiceMeeter Banana seems to forgo those issues, basically. I didn't have to change a lot of settings, but I wanted to take a few seconds to explain exactly how that works. Have a look at this image here. I tried to draw some kind of schematic on how this works. So I have two sound sources. I have the microphone for my own voice, and then I have the actual sounds from the systems. Let's say I want to play a video or an app or something that also has sounds, and I want to add that into the recording, of course. So I have these two sources, and OBS Studio was struggling with joining these two. So I want to do that before it goes into OBS. So both of these are connected into VoiceMeeter Banana as kind of virtual inputs. And then in VoiceMeeter Banana, you have several channels that you can, let's say, exit the sound with, that you can send the sound onto. And it has an auxiliary channel, A1, but it actually has three. If you look here, it has three separate channels, A1, 2, and 3. And it also has some other channels, B1 and B2. And you cannot see them here, but they are there also. You can see them here, though, on the individual tracks. So I have decided that B1 is what I'm going to send on to OBS. And I'm going to mark both inputs, the microphone input and the main sound input, to go to B1. And for my own part, I still want to hear the sound in my own headset if I would listen to that, so that goes to A1. However, I'm not sending the microphone over here unless I just want to hear myself talk, because that would basically send the audio from my microphone as kind of an echo back into my own headset with just a slight delay. Now I'm going to show you how I connected all these together. We do that here with hardware input. For this part, I chose this one. That is the microphone that's on my desk at the moment. You often see the same input source with different types of drivers in front. So WDM, that's this one. But here, that is the same one, MME. Both of them work. I am recommended that this one provides slightly faster performance. So this means less delay. But if you experience crackling sounds even with VoiceMeeter, then MME would be the better choice as far as I understood. So for me, all the crackling disappeared, so I went for this one. On hardware input 2, I have the actual desktop audio, the audio that would go to my headset normally. This is what would say play normal music. And here I've chosen cable output VB audio virtual, and that is basically a virtual audio cable. The reason I can use this here is because I've chosen this one, cable input VB audio virtual cable. If VoiceMeeter somehow wouldn't work, that I could just go back and select one of my normal headphones or something, and I would have my own sound back. But having this right here means that if I now play music, it will also enter this output. So let me turn on some music. There you go. So you can see that I now have two inputs right here. And by pressing these buttons, I choose where I want to send them on. And then you can see that what I have highlighted here corresponds to my map. You can tell here A1 is what goes to my headset, and hardware and the desktop audio is the one that has A1 selected, but the microphone doesn't. However, the microphone has B1 selected in both cases. And that is what I am sending on to OBS. Other than that, I have just the slightest modifications that I've done with the sound. One important feature is the gate. That is some kind of noise reduction system that would eliminate any low-level buzzing. So if I would take this entirely down, you would see here from the gain that there is a slight noise that the microphone is picking up. Let me just turn this all the way down. And you can tell here it's picking up the noise from my computer. And if there would be some fan in the background or the washing machine or something going in the kitchen, then that would be picked up too. So I'm going to take this up again to 4.2. I think that's what I had. And then the gate will kick in and take that noise out. There we go. And that means then it's completely quiet if I stay quiet. So let's move over to OBS and see how I'm picking up the B1 signal. So here in OBS, I have done a couple of things. First is I go to the settings and I go to audio, and I've disabled all the other possible inputs, and I've only selected VoiceMeeter output VB audio VoiceMeeter, and this is the one that captures B1 for me. And I can tell this because when I'm speaking, I can notice here that there's activity that it's picking up the sound. All the other microphones are now disabled because I only have sound coming from one source, and I've kind of mixed them in together before. Let's just run through the other settings that I have. For the output, I've chosen this decoder, and I have chosen this rate control. For the audio, I'm actually using a rather low bit rate. I think that's just something that's left from when I was experimenting, trying to fix everything. And for the recording here, I export this to MP4, and I have only one audio track. And that's fine because all the sound is coming in as one audio track. For the video output, I'm actually recording a canvas that corresponds to the size of my display, the main display that is. I'm exporting it, however, to a lower resolution, but this resolution is typically what we would call 1080p, so it's still a very high resolution. But if the image isn't very clear, then I will probably try to match the same and see if I can get a sharper image. That is if I want to show applications and so on. And then I am using a frame rate of 30. A higher frame rate would make my video slightly better to watch. I think this comes off as slightly slower. At least 60 frames per second seems more natural, but it is a lot more work for the computer. I'm going to experiment with this, and if I feel the strain is being handled by my computer, I'm going to increase this to 60, as that is typically what people want. I've also changed the Process priority, I've set that to above normal just to make sure that OBS isn't stuttering or anything. So I'd rather let the other applications suffer. Those were all the settings I have at this point. I will now try to do the actual recording, and when we meet on the other side, that is when I have tried to record something and I'm happy with the sound, at least from the raw recording. There's no stuttering and crackling noises. And then we go to the next phase, which is the actual editing part of the video.